Hey there guys, it's Metro and we are back with the final installment where we're going through every dungeon and doing a full deep dive for all the Season 2 collective knowledge, having a look at Season 2's Necrotic Wake today. Now, if you are somehow new to Season 2, this is the easiest dungeon by a mile. Like, honestly, I don't even think it's close. I think it's like twice as easy as any other dungeon. Very bizarre circumstances that have unfolded. It was even slightly nerfed because of how they changed the weapons in the beginning of Season 2, and it's still just absurdly easy. So I wanted this one to be the last one I made because I wanted to get the right footage, and I got it. I got it today. So we're going to show you some things that you could really mess up in this dungeon, but we'll also talk about ways that you could not mess up. So let's get right to it. Now, right out of the gate here, there's a lot of trash. Now, again, if you haven't seen the route video, I would take a moment to look at that, okay? I'm going to be doing this very aggressive pulling because it is a very, very easy week for trash. I think probably one of the easiest possible weeks for trash. Might be one of the easiest weeks in the game as well. But it's also, I'm feeling very capable on my blood DK, very powerful on weeks that aren't destroying me on trash. So if you don't feel this capable, don't worry about any of this. This is not like a normal pull, even though it's a 20. You don't have to do this in a 10. You don't have to do this in any key. It doesn't matter. But it's a very efficient way to start the dungeon. If you've been watching this series, you will know it's always good to get the first pack maximized because everybody has CDs up. It's the only time in the dungeon where everybody has CDs up, right? And as you see, some pretty nice numbers here. Not nothing crazy either. I've seen people doing way more than that on this pack. But anyway, there's a couple mobs here, one way or the other, in these first fill pulls. I would say these blight bags are stuff that just don't even try to worry about them. They're just fodder, like legitimately. Then there's also these soldiers. These mobs are elites, so they will do affixes. So like busting we have this week, bolstering others. So a week like that, you're not going to do that. Probably a week like sanguine, you might not want to do something like this. But the harvesters are the main thing. And then we also have the Stitched Vanguard. Those are like of all the first two pulls or first whatever, however many pulls you want to make this. These are the important mobs. Now the Harvester is going to do a stun. It's like channel, like it's like a cast that he kind of channels on a person. So you just need to disrupt that in any way you can. It's called like drain fluids or something like that. And the Vanguard is gonna there's drain fluid, so that's interruptible. And then the Stitched Vanguard is also gonna do a meat shield, which just puts this like gradually increasing shield on himself the longer he channels it. So we just want to interrupt both of those. But if you fail, you could always stun, knock back, grip, anything that will stop those casts, especially Drain Fluid. Like Drain Fluid while it's channeling is stunning someone. And I've had that happen where during Inspiring, I make a pull like this and we just can't stop it. And then, that person isn't very happy about that, but it's like, I mean, it's unfortunate, but like, we're not going to CC out. I don't know. It's like, it's more complicated than just that. So anyway, that's something to keep in mind. These first two packs, you have 2 Harvesters and 1 Vanguard always. Now, this isn't a bad time to do some mind controlling. This pack is actually very dangerous, and on Fortified, I would say this is probably one of the hardest packs in the dungeon. I'm not really sure why, to be honest, but it's just probably because everybody's used everything on the first pack, and you don't really have too much for the second pack. It's a great pack to have, save some CDs for. Even if you're not pulling the Patchwork Soldiers or whatever, the Blight Bags I pulled with this pack really don't mean anything at all. I probably should have gotten them with the first pack, but it's hard to get everything corralled as a Blood DK, man. People just always pull threats, so got to be a little cautious. But yeah, Drain Fluid. And another problem here is that we're really far away from the boss when we're pulling it like that. So now I'm starting to go towards the boss. Now, I want to tell you about something very specific that has just occurred, okay? This is one of the most common questions I get on the stream anymore, and I completely understand why. If you didn't see it, I will show it to you one more time. Executioner Varuth, he comes running all the way from over there. We're all the way through that trash, and we are now going to fight him over here on the Goliath. So I'm going to clip this and put this in the thing for other people, because obviously a lot of people don't know about this, but What I did there was I'm using the trinket from Tazavesh, something of the First Order or whatever. You can see the icon there. It's the tank trinket from middle of the dungeon in Tazavesh, okay? It is currently bugged. I don't really know how to describe this because it's been this way for like 8 weeks now. It doesn't seem like it's changing. So it's starting to make me think that they either, I mean, I guess there's a couple options. They either don't know it's bugged, they know it somehow. I don't know how that would be the case. They know it's bugged and they can't fix it, or it's not bugged and this is the way it's meant to work. And I'll tell you why it's working this way. The damage is done to your target. So the trinket reflects the damage that you take from the mob, okay? It reduces the damage and reflects it. Now this trinket, it only does the damage to a single target. Okay, so this is why I really like this trinket. Another reason, but so the Patchwork Soldiers, they're doing damage to me. Executioner Varuth's doing damage to me, but it's gonna reflect all the damage to Varuth. So this is really good on a few boss fights. It's a very, very good trinket for both offense and defense. But when you bring in that utility, it's the best trinket in the game. And then it's got stamina on it, which I'm liking a lot as a blood DK. It's insanely valuable for a few reasons. But yes, any target that you like, when this trinket is up, you click a target, they will be the one to take the damage. So the mobs that are hitting me here, I could then target something else and it will throw that damage at that mob. Now, when you're talking about a regular mob, you don't want to really randomly pull a mob that far away because it's going to aggro a bunch of trash, okay? But they coded it so the lieutenants do not aggro anything that they pass through. That was an intentional decision by Blizzard. That is not a bug, and that can be done regardless of how you pull them. They will run through any mobs and not aggro, so they could place them wherever they want without their concern, being like, oh, we can't get this pack over here. So that is intentional. The trinket likely is not, but it's been this way for so long that I no longer feel like, it's like whatever. I mean, there's maybe some really absurd things I can do with it that I'm choosing not to. But this one is like, 100 could have done this anyway. It's very easy. Somebody with a long ranged ability can easily go and get that mob. And we fight him here. But that is how I do this. You just have to have the trinket up. You have to you see the icon up here. You can barely see it, but yeah, you can see it up here. It looks like a little deck of cards or something like that. When it's up, it will reflect damage. You have to be taking damage for it to work, obviously. But any target anything within 100 yards, I believe is what it is, and it should work. It's got that global radius on it. So, you can't like pull a mob from a different expansion, but you can pull anything within 100 yards, and it should come a running. So anyway, that's that. It's not a bad idea to get Varuth here, even if you have to go all the way around to the boss. In fact, that's, I believe, what I have on the route. On a tyrannical week, I think it's definitely worth it. The problem is here, there's a big mistake that can be made here. I want to talk about this. So that robot there is the Kyrian buff, okay? It's probably the most powerful buff in the game right now for all 8 dungeons. And it requires the Kyrian spell to be active. All right, so the robot has to be summoned by the Guardian, the little owl thing that you spawn. And that's a 5-minute CD or a 4-minute CD or something. I can't remember exactly how the CD works, but it's not always going to be up. So it's not like the gargoyles where whenever there's a gargoyle, you can take them. You have to have it up. So if you only have one Kyrian, you have to be very cautious about how you use this. So I'm going to go run through a few scenarios here that have caused some issues for us in the past. In the beginning of the season, when I was going around to get Varuth, people would always spawn their owl now, okay, and then we'd go around and get Varuth and come back, and then we'd do the robot. And sometimes they would even spawn the owl and use the robot. Now, if that happens, don't go for Varuth. The robot is so much more. This power that you gain, all 5 players, is going to be way more than anything Varuth or the Incinerator can offer. Okay, whatever. It's either Varuth or the Incinerator. Doesn't matter what's over there. This robot will do more damage than that will do by a mile. So if that happens, don't even think about leaving. Just stay here and do the boss. But the mistake is more finesse than just that kind of brute force error. So if you spawn the owl, then you come back. What that does is it only lasts for a certain period of time. So then you won't have the owl for the next robot, which is coming up the stairs, okay? So what you ideally do here is you pull this robot and then advance through the trash and the boss quick enough that you have it up for the next one as well. Now that doesn't happen in this key, and that's probably just because the boss takes really long and everything else, we have to move through the area relatively slowly. So this is a low key thing that you're not going to have an issue with, but in maybe higher keys or keys where things take longer, you are going to have an issue with this. You will not have the Kyrian buff for the second robot if you only have one. So there's a lot of coordination and maximization you can do there, but it's so important to maximize that buff. Like, it is going to be so much of your dungeon damage. Absolutely insane. Also, don't forget to take the anima power like I do here. This boss, though, complete joke. We actually even use the weapon here. So if for somehow you're not aware of this, there is weapons on the ground, little items. They are not related to Kyrian. They are just in the dungeon for anybody to use, and you can use them to tremendous effect. Okay, so there's 4. There is a spear, which is the best one, and it does a bunch of damage. As you see, Bloody Javelin, he used that there, the warrior. It also makes the boss or the mob that you use it on take more damage for a while as well. So it's extremely valuable to use there. Now they changed it so they can't crit anymore, or they can't scale off stats and stuff anymore, but they do a lot of damage, like a ton of damage. And it used to do even more because of a bug, so now they fixed that. But there's another one on the way here. There's a hammer, okay? The hammer is basically it stuns the mob if it can be stunned. So it's not just like a pure stun. Like we've had some of those, like the jar, and no matter what, it's going to stun. That will not work if you use it on something that is unstunnable. Actually, no, that's not even true. It just won't work on a boss. Yeah, you just can't stun the boss with the hammer, but it will stun any mob, I believe, that you use it on. So powerful, but it doesn't do that much damage. Just a relatively big chunk of single target. And as you see, Anima Exhaust there, 20% of that guy's damage. So that's the buff from the Kyrian thing we were just talking about. It's insanely big. Now there's those first 2 that we saw there. Then there's going to be another shield around the corner over here. The shield is almost never used. I don't even know what it is. I think it's a 30% damage buff or damage reduction. But you have to channel it. So maybe a healer takes it. I highly doubt there's any play for this, especially because it's in a really bad spot in this first one. But there is one coming up that you can actually get. But I've never seen a single person take it and do anything with it. And then the fourth one is there's only 2 locations for these other ones. The orb is a massive AoE, and it also silences everything around you. So we'll talk about that when we go. But hopefully you guys know about this. That should be the basics of the dungeon. But if you've never picked it up and used it, maybe you didn't know what it did. It should be easy to see them. I'll go at the end just to make sure. I will go through everything, all their locations if I miss them. But okay, so here we're doing a really big pull, and I am control undeading the brittle mage or whatever it's called. Okay, that mage is actually the most dangerous mob on the pack because it does this insane volley, this frostbolt volley. And typically, if you don't have a blood DK or DK in general, you're going to have to kill that pack. You cannot really kill the mage, okay? The necromancer will kill the mobs for you. Any skeletons that he spawns, so any brittle bone mobs, they will die when the necromancer dies, which is good, but it means that you're going to have to do something about that mage because it's going to constantly cast that frostbolt volley. You see, he spawns a second one there, and I stun it. That is actually going to do insane AoE damage, especially on a fortified week. But again, you don't have to pull this big, but this is actually really only 3 elites. It's the Necromancer and then the 2 mobs on the left, one of which is a caster, one of which puts a bleed up, which we'll talk about shortly coming up here. But the actual difficulty is just the mobs, the fodder that he spawns, because they are going to do things and you're not really going to be able to control them. Okay, so we have a Ragnaros warrior demonstrating a mechanic that's incredibly important. This is one of the most important packs in the dungeon. So before we do it, we go and get the anima orb. This is one of the weapons I was talking about. So here's the location. This Goliath is not actually present. And as you, it's a lot going on here. So let's quickly go back to, so here is one of the powers. The Kyrian buff thing is here. And like I said, this is where you would want, right here. This is where you would want the owl to still be up from the first usage if you could. And like I said, that will almost always happen on lower keys where you go through things quickly. But when you do it fast, you will not see it. I'll just quickly go through the trash one more time since we're doing it all again. The Bone Carver does a pretty dangerous bleed on the tank, and the Sorcerer does a few casts. Okay, the big cast that it does is just this bolt that if it hits you, it's going to put a healing reduction on you. So you have 2 dots on me. Healing reduction. Yeah, well, it's not even a reduction. It's like a healing. You have to heal a certain amount before you can be healed. So it's pretty easy to deal with this blood DK, but it can be pretty devastating at the wrong time. And then this thing, I think it actually does something with your maximum health, but it just does a lot of damage over time. And coming up, there's 2 mobs. Now, they did nerf the hell out of that mechanic a long time ago. So this trash is pretty much just going to be complete fodder. Now, there's other mechanics that the Sorcerer does. We'll see them on the next pack a little bit more. But the big thing is it drops a little grayish black. It's shadow well there. You see, it's going to be like a black pool on the ground, greenish black. If you stand in that, you're going to take a lot of magic damage. It's pretty common for DPS to stand in it and kind of just not have any idea what they're doing. Also, another tip I'm going to give you, I mind controlled that mob, that mage, okay? Once the necromancer dies, if you release the mind control, the mob just immediately dies too. So that's a good thing in my opinion, but if you want to keep the mage, because it does do pretty good AoE damage, don't let it despawn, like don't accidentally release it, or, you know, after 5 minutes, it's going to go away regardless. So just something to note. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to take this. This isn't ideal that I'm getting this. It would be a lot better if another DPS can get it, but I cannot trust them to use it where I want because a lot of people do not like pulling this pack, or I don't really understand why. To me, this is the easiest pack in the dungeon to get per count. You're going to see how much count we get from this pack. It's a slam dunk. I'm never going to avoid this pack. It was pretty bad on some fortified weeks at times. But honestly, as long as you actually do the pack right, it's 0 danger, and this this orb just completely nullifies the difficulty of the pack. But this pack that we're about to pull is actually a little bit sneaky dangerous. So let me talk about it. It's got 3 incredibly important mobs in it, and one of them is the Marauder we're seeing for the first time. So this Marauder is going to do a gruesome cleave, a frontal that my Ragnarosian warrior friend is going to demonstrate. Do not be in front of this mob as a DPS or a healer, obviously. And this is going to happen a lot because people are going to get the anima exhaust thing from the robot, and then you have to stand in melee range with that. I should have mentioned that before. When you get that, it does damage and healing around you, so you need to be in melee range to hit the targets, okay? So you're going to have all 5 players in melee range. As the tank, it is kind of your responsibility to make sure you don't hit any of them. But unfortunately, usually what happens is all 5 are kind of loosely spread out around, completely clueless, and one of them gets hit inevitably. Like there's nothing you can do about it. Now I could have moved that, but that's a Ragnarosian warrior, so we want to hit that guy, and I'm perfectly fine with the result there. He doesn't even die. Okay, so let's talk about some of the casts that are occurring here. So there's the pool on the ground, which again is very dangerous. People are always going to accidentally stand in it. They won't realize that. But there was another dangerous cast that we need to be aware of from the Bone Mender. The Bone Mender is actually probably the priority interrupt here. So that Bone Mend is going to do a sizable heal on whoever he targets. And as you see, it's going to heal that Sorcerer for almost 20% of its health. So that's a really bad thing. We're trying to go through this quick, and we keep letting those Bone Mend casts go off. So yet again, another great quality heal there. Now, the other thing about this Marauder is it's going to put up this shield, and if you break the shield, it basically kills the mob, long story short. I think it does like a massive amount of damage based on how much damage you dealt to the shield. So that's why it always kills the mob. But yeah, so whenever you see that shield on the Marauder, you got to switch to it quickly. Because if you fail, it's really bad. Like now the mob's health pool has extended. And that pack also does one other thing called Final Bargain or something like that. The Bone Mender is going to basically sacrifice its own life to massively heal the other target that it has. So just keep that in mind. That pack is a little sneaky dangerous. It's mostly because of the cleave. The Marauder also does a fear, okay? It does a long cast. It's like a 3-second cast, a big purple circle. You could actually get out of the fear, but if you don't interrupt it or get out of it, you will be feared, and that could be an easy wipe there, okay? People will get feared into the next pack, and they will die. Luckily, it's Blood DK. We can both AMS and Lichborn. Okay, so let's talk about this pack. So this is actually, it looks like probably one of the hardest packs in the dungeon. It really is. 2 sorcerers and a Bone Mender plus Nar'zudah, who is a mini boss, has 1 million health compared to 400k health on that Bone Mender. So it's got a fair amount of health, but everything dangerous about this pack is interruptible by the orb. Okay, so what we're going to do is, one thing I will quickly tell you is the orb's damage does not appear to generate threat. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think that's the case. So you do want to establish threat first, otherwise the mobs are going to run all around. So I usually come up, get a Blood Boil, maybe D&D, and then quickly go with the Discharge Anima from that item. Now, we also have the anima power, or the robots power from the Kyrian buff, so this pack is going to be even easier, and this is actually a mistake. Typically you would use this for all the stuff we just pulled, and it would be maybe if you would have a second or two of it, a few seconds coming into this pack. I mean, certainly on an easier key, if you line it up that way, you would definitely have a few seconds of it, but it's pretty uncommon to have it for this pack. But this makes it even easier. But again, the difficulty here is all these casts, and you're going to interrupt all of them in a way that they will never get a cast off, and they will basically die before it stops. So it's not just that, though. So let's see it play out. It's not just that, though. There's also Nar'zudah that we have to kill, and I'll explain what he does. So the first mechanic he's going to do is this Death Burst, okay? This is going to be a bunch of green orb spawn, and if you get hit by those, you die, effectively. Like, it's just going to pretty much one-shot anybody. Does a ton of damage when they explode, so do not be hit. But as you see, these mobs are dead before the anima orb thing is even over. And I'm actually running out for this last tick, so I'm actually missing a tick on that, and that's not a good thing. But let me explain to you what I'm doing, because I'm getting this hammer. This seems like a slam dunk to me. I always use this hammer here, but on a difficult tyrannical week, you might want to save it, okay? So the hammer has kind of a little sneaky usage that people like to use it for at the end of the dungeon, but I would recommend for 9 out of 10 keys, use it on this guy, because this guy is, he's not no mechanics, okay? He also puts up this shield, which we might have just missed. But he puts up this shield that if it's on him, he's going to do a ton of damage to a bunch of people. Yeah, we must have missed that. Let's take a look at that again. He's going to put up a shield. Yeah, there it is. Dark Shroud. Okay. So this shield, I don't show it obviously properly because it's handled right. It can be purged. Okay. So any magic dispel, so priest, shaman, demon hunter, and I guess hunter too, can get rid of that. If you don't get rid of it, it constantly pulses damage. I think it might be when you deal damage to the mob, but it might just be regardless. I've actually seen a group wipe to it because we didn't have any magic dispel, and I actually did not know what was even happening. I had to look it up. But yeah, the combination of this mechanic plus that mechanic is extremely dangerous. Like the most dangerous in the dungeon. Even on a tyrannical week, you will die to this, but it's completely avoidable, right? So I mean, if you're doing a serious key, there's no reason to think you can't avoid it. But if you do come here without any of those classes, be aware. Be very aware. And that's why I use the hammer typically here, because it's like, yeah, this mob is actually pretty dangerous, and the more death bursts they cast and the more spells they cast, the worse it gets. So we just want to kill that as quick as possible. So those are a couple of the small mistakes we made. We're about to make some major mistakes, so let's pay attention here. The Marauder actually is not one of the major mistakes. We have the Cleave pointed away from the melee, easy mode. They're not going to get hit. And then they're both going to put the shield up. Now, one thing about this pack is oftentimes they will both cast the Fear at the same time. So I would just, again, recommend as a tank, quickly dedicate to interrupting one so the rest of the DPS can interrupt the other one without accidentally overlapping. But yeah, somebody getting feared here is very likely, and it could be an even worse mistake or even worse wipe than what we encounter here. But the shields go up. Now, on a fortified week, it's very, very important that you do good damage on this pack, because if you fail to break both shields, which is very common on fortified week because people are splitting their damage, you will have this pack take forever. And this gives a good amount of count. I forgot to mention the Nar'zudah count, but you could see it. Go back and look at it. But yes, these mobs give a fair amount of count. These are very efficient mobs to kill if you kill them quickly. Another reason why this dungeon is so easy. As you see, we basically one-shot that mob from like 70% health because of that shield. So, okay, so that is it for the good parts. Now let's see the mess. Now, again, we have another pack over here. This is on my route. I like going left here. mostly because of the Kyrian buff, but also because it's a sizable, it's a good count. It's a good place for Blood DK to kind of flex as well. I can use the control undead on the mage and take the danger out of the pack. Usually doing that, the necromancer dies really quick. But anyway, this exhaust is so insane that even if we were only fighting that, it would be super worth it. But now we're gonna do something. So in about like 3 weeks ago, they moved Sogadon from where he was to right here. You see him over in the corner here. He's kind of just hanging out. He used to be along the left side edge, and I was actually able to pull him with the trinket, snap him down to the first area. They did the same thing in Sanguine Depths. You were able to pull one of the lieutenants upwards, and that was obviously not what they wanted. So they moved both of them to places they can no longer be snapped to different locations on. Now he's here. Now this is a skippable location. Obviously, a lot of people like skipping Sogadon. I do not. I don't really like skipping Sogadon, and I certainly don't like it in this dungeon. The only difficult part of this boss, this whole dungeon, will be the last boss. Well, not necessarily the case, but I don't know. I feel like Sogadon is a fine pull here. The problem I'm having is, man, does he really like to aggro this pack that's coming, that's patrolling over to us, okay? And it's mostly because he moves me over there and then just is really annoying to get back to where he wants to be. So what I'm trying to do here is move him even deeper. I think as long as he's south of this little kind of gray stone type stuff, like if he's in this area, we're safe, okay? But he is not, and it's going to cause a lot of problems because there's this basically mini boss patrolling down the way here. Now, if this went well, this is a fine pull. Like this, there's nothing wrong here. This necromancer is your target. Just get this thing killed as fast as possible and cleave off Sogadon. You should not have any difficulty with any part of doing those two packs together. But the problem is the patrol. So you're going to see, I'm not actually sure how it even aggroes. I assume it's maybe because of wild spirits. All of a sudden it just shows up and I don't actually even see it. Yeah, it just kind of walks into the wild spirits, I guess is the big issue. But I think one way or the other it was aggroing there. And now that's a wipe. There's no way you survive this because Sogadon and him are completely diametrically opposed. The skeletal monstrosity does a mechanic that you have to move out of and not stand in, and Sogadon forces you to get rooted and stand in it. So we are going to completely wipe here. No way to solve this. Once you pull this, you're pretty much toast. You'd have to get super lucky. And as you see, we do not. He grips everybody into that AoE mechanic, and that is GG. So watch the absolute. This is Blood DK in a nutshell. Let us enjoy this moment because this is. I feel like it's Legion again, man. This is so awesome. What happens here as Blood DK, okay? So we now have 3 packs, okay? We still have the Necromancer, which the group did not do very much damage to at all. Sogadon's at 66%, so people were obviously doing a lot of damage to Sogadon. We have the Mage out, casting Frostbolt. We have a lot of bad things happening, but look at the awesomeness that is the Blood Death Knight right now. Big death strikes. Just pay attention to my health bar in the middle of the screen. What I'm doing right now is trying to focus down the skull because I know if I can kill this skull, we have a dramatic impact on our success chance because he is doing so much problem. He's causing so many problems for me because I'm not able to get big heals. And look at this. So we have 6 stacks of the Frostbolt. That's the Frostbolt from the mage that's out here just casting. I still have mine, so there's actually 2 mages. Yeah, there's 2 mages because we've been fighting the pack so bad. We have the Binding of Misery, which is keeping me in the roots, and the Skeletal Monstrosity, which is going to potentially, one-shot me at any given moment. So I accurately, quickly kill my Binding. We're back on the skull. I'm dodging that little ice rock, and here we go. Big time. God, look at the death strike. Oh my God, dude, this is so awesome to watch. I have to watch it again. This is such a cool time. So this is like literally, I'm soloing this pack, okay? I'm doing more for myself on this pack than any other player could ever do for me, okay? And watch what happens here. So this Necromancer is almost dead, and so am I. We're taking a lot of damage. I don't actually know how we survived the first set of mechanics that I went through, but watch this. I am actually at 3% health. I apologize for the artifacting, but 3% health, 9,000 health. Now, if you haven't seen the way I've been playing my DK, oh, wait, no. Oh, no. That's the absorb amount. I have 4,000 health, 4,500 health. Okay. I normally have around 100,000 health. With the build that I'm playing right now, I normally have around 100,000 health, or slightly more at times. Well, definitely more at times. So look at this Death Strike. Watch up here. Hopefully it's not going to artifact. Yeah, well, it went so quick you couldn't really see it. But pay attention. I know exactly what the number is. It's 135,000, guys. 100. Yeah, it goes so quick you can't see it. 135,000 Death Strike. Okay. That is absolutely ridiculous, and it is the killing blow on that mob. So I don't know, man. Blood DK is in an insane state right now. I also get hit by that, and I don't even come close to dying to it. So I don't know. It's just dangerous because DPS, but everybody else, it's not a big deal. So the funniest part about this is it takes everybody so long to get back. Like we could have easily killed this pack, and salvaging this is fine. Like we could have easily salvaged this. This wouldn't even impact our count. You watch what I do. No, okay, not yet. I actually walk back into that because I'm impatient. I run out of it and like, come on, finish up. I want to get back. And I walk back into that and get stunned and die, and then we wipe. So yeah, pretty unfortunate. This has got to be it here. So I'm out of it, and I'm like, all right, come on, let's move. Ah, come on. I get stunned and we wipe. This is in a 20, and we upgrade this key, by the way, guys. This is how easy Necrotic Wake is, okay? So let's talk about that mistake really quick. So we aggro that mob. I don't really know how to solve this. Honestly, I don't know what to do. I think I might just have to stop pulling Sogan on there because I don't actually know what to do about that. Or I guess just pull him solo. But that has happened to me 3 times in like 5 keys now, and I don't really know how to solve it, as you see looking at the Death Strike stats. But when we do it right, it's like there's no challenge there at all. But if you do pull him and you can survive it, it's fine. It doesn't even give that much count. So you don't actually lose that much from doing that. Like it's like not even going to upset the route. So if you did that, instead of going around to the right and behind the next pat, we're going to go through to the left. Okay. So we're going to skip all of this area and that's it. Then you basically have what you need. I think you're like 1 mob short. So you probably need one of these 3 packs and then you go around to the left. I'm not 100% sure. But if you do that and we have done that and killed that mob there, it's not an issue. Like it's actually fine. It gives some count. It's not a big deal. Okay, so here's another hammer location. There's also the shield location here, which nobody ever takes. And then there's another spear location coming up. So I'm just going to pull all of this. Again, this is pretty dangerous. We have 2 bone carvers. We have a sorcerer. So actually it might be 3 bone carvers. Yeah. So there's a lot going on in this pack damage-wise, but super easy week. The bone flay, one tip I can give is try to stun it. You could stun it. You could also use a physical immunity to get it off, like a paladin might be able to bop it off. But it does a lot of damage, and it will cause issues with the Tazavist trinket when I'm running from this pack to the next pack, because I'll be ticking damage. This happens all the time, where I'm taking damage from this bone flay, and the Tazavist trinket will then reflect that damage onto my target, which I need to be very careful with, what I target when I do that. So just something to keep in mind. Happens to me all the time. Otherwise, very easy to survive this now. So just make sure somebody gets the spear here. A lot of times people forget this spear because they move through the pack so quick that they just don't even notice it, but it's there on the ground. Now I'm going to mind control a mage here. Another big tip is you can shackle. If you're a priest, you can throw a frost trap on that other mage. A lot of people really like to throw a frost trap on the farm mage, but just give them a second maybe. Make sure that they know your control undeading a mob, and you should be good. That's you're then mind controlling one and then shackling out the other. So this pack is the same thing as we saw before. Kill the necromancer and we're good. Now let's talk about this mistake, because this is another ridiculous error, okay? And it is going to wipe us here. Let's just quickly go back. I also want to say this is a dangerous pack, okay? So if you don't have mind controls and all this stuff to control these frost mages, these brittle bone mages, this might actually be a pack you want to consider using a weapon on. I have seen people use the hammer here to quickly kill the necromancer, and it's not a bad choice on a fortified week. But I don't know, man. People just can't single target in this game. That's the issue for me. I feel like people just never want a single target in this game. So frankly, if everybody just actually single targeted that mob down, like it really doesn't have that much health, right? Like it's not like it's some 2 million health mob or something. It's pretty straightforward to kill. So people just don't do it, and then the pack takes forever. People are always AoEing like crazy. Like I've seen people do like 60k on this pack, and it's like, wow, you're just brainless. It's absolutely silly. Okay, so what we're gonna do here, what we plan on doing here is using Tazavest Trinket to pull the Incinerator. Again, not needed. Anybody can go up and start that RP and then pull it down. When you cross that threshold, you get stunned by the RP. You see that? You dare deny me the sky, then I shall answer in kind. So she kills all the mobs. It's not really a big deal. It's like a 3-second stun, but it slows you down a few seconds. So I do like to pull that Incinerator down. And that's that. And now look at what the hell happens there, man. So the Tazavest Trinket giveth, and the Tazavest Trinket taketh away. So let's take a look at what actually occurs here, because it's a pretty ridiculous mistake. The only reason this actually occurs is because this pack is not dying. Because again, you got people just freaking AoEing. Like, how this pack is still alive is, I have no idea. It really doesn't even make sense to me. I guess it doesn't help that this hunter's doing 5k DPS on it. Anyway, one thing I will say before we go on from this, when you jump up over this little broken pillar, it's actually easy to get back up too. If you have to go back up, there's like a little rock you can jump on and then get around here. I can't show it to you today, but it's not hard. People think you can't jump back across it once you come. That's not true. You just have to kind of hop on the wall and then go around. If you have a pet, okay, and I'm pretty sure this includes any pet in the game. So obviously my DK pet, anything that I have control undeaded, things like a priest might have, a hunter, obviously a warlock. If you are gonna walk over this, it will run around. The pet will run around and aggro this pack, and you will wipe. Okay, so you need to either dismiss your pet or mount up. For whatever reason, if you mount up, pet's kind of like shimmy to the break of dawn, yeah, and they don't aggro anything. They just kind of follow you and they don't do anything. So you could just mount there, or you can dismiss your pet. As a DK, I always just make sure I dismiss the pet. I just don't want to risk it. That's that. Like, I don't know, I've never done it wrong, but maybe like if I dismount at the top of the thing, then he's gonna go back and run around. I just don't want to risk it. So just make sure as a blood DK, at least you don't have a pet. And we wiped to that multiple times. In fact, last time I did a 20 Necrotic Wake, we wiped because Braun, apparently, somebody else said it was the Warlock's pet, and then he pulls the plug, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was why, because he knew it was him. But I also saw Braun, the Kyrian, whatever, the capstone trait, or the first trait for Mechanicos, he spawns and runs around. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was also the issue, but regardless, it's very not uncommon to have that happen, okay? So what occurs here is, let's try to break it down because it's actually quite interesting. So anyway, I'm up there trying to get this dude. I know I need to do it, and I'm like assuming I'm kind of like tunnel vision onto getting this dude. And I'm like, wait, this mob is still not dead? Are you kidding me? So I go to grip it, okay, and I do grip it, and now my character is facing this ridiculous angle, okay, and my mouse is right here in the center of the screen, and as you see, I accidentally target this mob. Now, I'm not even sure why, because I thought it was actually my mouse, but there must be more to it than that. I must hit a spell or something that automatically acquires a target, but it's pretty yeah, so like somehow I just target that. Maybe I press the F key, which is my nearest target, but I do something that automatically acquires a target. I thought I actually clicked it by accident, but that's not what happened. But anyway, I acquire that target, and you can't really see it too easily, but it's got 1 second left. It's got 1 second left. This freaking Tazavest Trinket. 1 second left. And the only reason, even with 1 second left, the only reason it aggroes is busting. That's it. I take damage from busting, and it does reflect that damage onto my target. So this wouldn't have happened any other week. Maybe Grievous. It shouldn't have happened at all because that mob should have been dead. I shouldn't have had to turn back for it, which is obviously my fault anyway. But I mean, that's just something that I didn't expect to happen. and then somehow I aggro, which I still don't actually know. So, but we wipe again. Watch this. We wipe again. We aggro the pack. We're gonna wipe again. We're obviously not gonna kill this. No way we're killing this. Okay. As soon as it happens, I'm like, well, okay, that's it. And I actually expect the key to disband at this point, because typically that's what would happen, because everybody is like panic heavy and they quickly leave a key that doesn't go perfectly. But actually, the group kind of does this little thing here where it almost saves the morale of the key, which is hilarious, because I think 0 people in the game who don't play Blood DK, or maybe a tank in general, know what just occurred. Let's put it that way. Nobody's actually going to understand what just occurred, because I just did that twice, right? I pulled 2 different packs with the Tazavest trinket, and I don't think anybody understands that, so they think it's some kind of error or bug maybe. So they're less likely to just give up because they think something against their fortunes happened. Like they didn't do anything wrong. Nobody did anything wrong. So the warrior's like, who pulled the fire guy? And then the healer's like, oh, it must have been a pet. And then the hunter's like, it wasn't my pet. One person pulled a pack of 4. One person pulled ahead and ran them and got the mini boss. He doesn't understand. I did both. He doesn't understand that I did both. And so it's like they're just kind of all circulating blame, and I'm like, keep our head down. We're gonna just get through this, no problem. But that's actually fine. Like we legitimately wiped there, and we lose about 1.5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes. Not a good thing, but this key is a complete joke. Like legitimately a absolute joke, and you're gonna see the end of it. So we're coming up to the home stretch now. So we have the incinerator here. It's simple. Again, just interrupt them. Nothing to talk about here. But there's another anima orb here. I could talk about using this one in many different ways. And I do not use it very well here because I'm very conscious of this third boss. This third boss is extremely dangerous. We're talking about it in chat right now. I am recommending on Tyrannical Week using 2 spears on this third boss, okay? And the first time I did this week, people were like, you're an idiot, don't do that. But the second group seems perfectly fine with that, and I agree with that. I think that's what you do, 2 spears on the third boss, because it's very mechanically dense, and a lot of people aren't good at mechanics. Let's put it that way. I've had a lot of wipes of that. So anyway, at this point, I take the more offensive approach because I know there's no difficulty left in the dungeon for me. This boss is a very, very, very easy encounter now. And using a weapon here is a massive bait, I think. Like, you really don't want to do this. And the pack, or like whatever, the trash that he spawns is easy to manipulate. There's 3 different ways you can manipulate this trash. One of them is with a hunter trap, right? You see right that over there. That mob is hunter trap, so as long as nobody breaks it, it's going to stay CC'd the whole time. The other way is with control undead. I mind controlled the mob. It's now on our team. And then the other way is just simply with stuns. When he kills them, which is about to happen, I'll show you the mechanic. Final harvest. If they are incapacitated, stunned, or controlled in any way, they will not explode. Okay? So you could literally not even kill them and just AoE stun them at the last second when that cast goes off, like an interrupt, right? So at the last second, you AoE stun every mob and they don't explode. So it's like, it doesn't exist. The mechanic doesn't exist. I don't think anybody's going to do that, but it is an option, okay? Now, the mob used to die to the green circles on the ground, the mind control version of the mob. It doesn't die to that anymore. So now I have to release it and kill it. So I just release it, and then it doesn't get exploded, and then we kill it afterwards. And just taking it there, I mean, it doesn't look like it's needed, but 2 different casters out would be very difficult. You need a lot of interrupts, so we're just taking that out of it. Now, I should have probably just used the orb at some point on this fight, because it is very good for this fight. But it's just so freaking easy now, man. This dungeon is... I cannot believe how easy this dungeon has become. And as long as you have lust for this boss, you rarely get more than 2 ads. It is a 20, so we are going to get 3 sets of ads. But yeah, to see more than 3, it's like, you'd be really bad. So if you see more than 3, then maybe you want to start thinking about changing what you're doing. But for me, I feel like this is the easiest boss in here, so we're not in any... I don't care about this fight, especially when we have a hunter. And as me as a DK, it's like the only difficulty is that that add. I should also say there's an interrupt that you really do want to interrupt on the boss. It puts a big healing absorb on you again. And there's also a breath. That frontal breath that you saw there. If you get hit by that, you get one shot. Okay, so I'm sorry. I'm trying to go through this quick because it's just such an easy dungeon, man. Like I could literally say nothing about most of these packs, and I think I would cover all of it. But that's just testament to how easy it is. Even on Tyrannical, that boss was a no challenge boss. Okay, so anyway, we have another pack up here. These are the same mobs we've basically been fighting, only this time it's called Corpse Collector, and it does one other mechanic besides drain fluid and throw flesh. It's also going to do gore splatter. Okay, this is a very dangerous, I believe it's a disease. Okay, it's going to hit all 5 players, and it does a ton of damage. So there it is there, gore splatter. You need to interrupt that, okay? Make sure you interrupt that. Hunter gets threat, doesn't realize it dies. So again, this would probably have been a good pull. With the orb, there's a lot of options up here. I really think it'd be a good idea to pull maybe 3 packs together in an orb. But I'm thinking in my head, like, we don't need to take that risk on trash because I have died to that doing that. And we need to make sure we don't wipe to the 3rd boss because that's the only thing standing in our way. Even with 3 full wipes, we are upgrading this key easily, okay? So yes, very bad use of the orb. In fact, people are actually, you know, like in my chat on my live stream, people are like basically like, what are you, an idiot? Why are you not using the orb? Yeah, I don't, it's like I don't care about trash. Trash is such a joke. We are not going to have any issues with trash. Even if it does mediocre damage on a boss, I would rather use it on a boss. So you're going to see how we pull it there. Anyway, these 2 mobs into the lieutenant, I feel like is a very optimal way to do it. This flesh crafter does this throw cleaver. Now there's one of these mobs earlier in the dungeon as well, but I don't go that route. This flesh crafter actually does a lot of damage to anything it hits with that arrow. So that arrow is going to be thrown at a player, throw cleaver. If the player gets hit, they get slaughtered by it, but it can hit trash, okay? Now, I'm not 100% sure this is the case, but people are saying that you cannot hit the lieutenants with it anymore. In the very beginning of the season, you could, and I did it, and it was awesome. But now it seems like it does not hit the lieutenants ever. So I think that's probably the case. And it does kind of make sense. It probably doesn't work on bosses and stuff too now. You used to be able to bolster the hell out of that mob and just run around and one-shot everything in the dungeon with it, but they changed that. So it's still a valuable mob. Make sure if you're the target of that arrow, you're trying to hit something else. And if you can't hit another target, then try to make sure the tank gets hit. Because if you get hit as a non-tank, you will probably die, okay? So yet again, we could have pulled both of these packs and used the orb, but like I said, I'm just thinking like, oh, I don't even care about this trash man. It's a non-factor. The collector, again, we have another one that we need to interrupt. And now I should probably talk about the Kyrian Stitchwork, okay? So we already saw one of those. We're going to see a few more before we're done in this area. This Stitchwork does 2 things. That's it. It does a tenderize, which makes you take more damage. You see this stacking armor debuff on me. Makes me take more physical damage, I believe, or just armor reduction. And then it does a mutilate. Okay, that mutilate hits extremely hard. And obviously the difficulty of the pack is tenderize 4 stacks or whatever the max. I think it's 4 stacks is the max into the mutilate. All right. If you fail to deal with that, you will be in serious danger. Okay. So what I recommend as a Blood DK is simply use 1 CD every time mutilate happens. There's a variety of other ways to deal with it too. Somebody can taunt one of the tenderizes off you. A hunter can do it with their pet, or just an actual damage dealer can do it. If you put down trees at the right time as a bombkin, you will stop it. I don't know if that cardboard assassin thing still works, but that was something people used. If you put that down at the right time, all you need to do is just avoid one of the stacks of tenderize and they will drop and you will have no problems with the pack. But if you have multiple stacks of the tenderize stacking up, you will get slaughtered by that. But I still, as a Blood DK, don't feel any danger there. I just rotate 1 CD, either Icebound, Lichborn, Vamp Blood, or Rune Tap. Or even just get a good Blood Shield on before it hits you. Like, that's something that I've been doing a lot more recently, is Death Striking before the damage. Because I don't know, I swear they buffed something about Blood DK, but I'm getting insane mastery, and I don't even have that much mastery on my gear. So I'm getting insane Blood Shields. Like, if you go back to that moment where I healed for 135k with a Death Strike, it was also a 50k absorb on after that. So it's like, I mean, that's just ridiculous. So that's effectively a 200k pad, you know what I mean? Like, what the hell is going on there? But anyway, this pack is super easy. There's also this mob that kind of tries to knock you around. If you get hit by that gray circle, you're going to take a bunch of damage and get knocked back. But honestly, man, the trash, everything in here is just so easy. It's hard to even feel like I need to explain any of it, like legitimately. But obviously, if anybody has any questions, please let me know. I think the Flesh Crafter is probably the main thing here. Just make sure you're not letting your DPS get hit by those arrows and making sure that if you can, hitting the trash with them. So now we have two dudes who are going to do arrows. One tip I will give is this one on the left. It needs to be moved over to the one on the right. For some reason, the one on the right won't move. The one on the left will. So quickly stand on the right one and taunt that left one. I guess it's also because it comes out a second early. But so here's the ideal situation. 2 throw cleavers, 1 on each person. They're aiming them right at the mobs. And they're going to do tons of damage, as you see. Or you would if the video did an artifact. But yeah, you see that one comes out a second early. So you can actually get it over here. It makes it a lot easier to do this. Pretty nice little tip. And yeah, see, there's like over 10% damage there. So pretty good. The separator assistant is also going to do morbid fixation, which I've seen a lot of people die to. It basically just fixates on a person, so it's on that warrior. He is not even aware that it's on him, and he doesn't even die because it's such an easy trash week. But usually what that does is it creates problems for the arrows because now one mob is going to be really far away. So that is where you want to come in as a tank, step in and get hit by that arrow. If the person does not demonstrate that they can throw it at the other assistant. But obviously, the ideal circumstance, as you see, I'm trying to soak this. The ideal circumstance is hit both every time, okay? And you can actually just straight up kill the mobs with that. So now we're in a bit of a gauntlet. These named mobs are basically Kyrie and Stitchworks, but maybe with a little twist. So this first guy is basically like a souped up version of one. He's going to have one other mechanic as well. But he's going to tenderize first, and then he's going to mutilate, and then he's going to do this thing called gut slice or something. Yeah, gut slice. So he's going to turn to a player. He always turns to a player and tries to do a slash, like a frontal thing, okay? If you get hit by that, it does a fair amount of damage. I've actually seen people die to the upfront damage, but the big issue is it puts this ridiculous bleed on you. It's like a 20-second bleed. Really, really dangerous. You see that red frontal there. That's how you dodge it, okay? It's very simple. Just dodge it. People get hit by that on fortified, they're going to die. Paladin can obviously remove the bleed. Maybe Kyrian as well, but realistically, you get hit by that, you're in serious trouble. But you see, even with 2 stacks, even on this easy trash week, I still got hit for almost 30% of my health there. When you have 100k health, taking a 30k damage hit is definitely, it's something to be prepared for. And that mutilate there again. So I just want to use 1 CD every time. But it's just so much easier now in Season 3, man, or Season 2, because if I have the Varus shield, and between the trinket and all the other stuff we have now, the accretion shield from the gem, it's just like, I don't know, man. It's just so easy to survive stuff now. I have so much passive defense now. It's kind of crazy. Okay, so now Rot Spew is kind of like, he does only mutilate. Okay, so the combo here is that you would still have stacks from the previous one. This actually happens a lot where I run from one Kyrian Stitchwork into another pack and die because I still have the damage taken buff. Just keep that in mind. That could happen on Rot Spew where his first mutilate will hit you with the stacks of the previous one. But it's pretty unlikely because you have to get it. You basically have to get tenderized as the previous guy died because there's still like a few seconds before this one spawns. But this dude is actually insanely dangerous for the group because that puddle he puts down does absolutely wild damage. And last week when it was Raging Fortified, Raging like obviously increases that damage, and it would just, I think it almost like one-shot a guy. So very dangerous. Just move out. He also does this puddle around him as well. It's like a kind of a disease thing around him, kind of like the old patchworks in Stratholme and stuff. When they die, they leave that on the ground. This guy does the same thing, okay? So wherever he dies, don't stand in it. I've had it happen with Pride back in Season 1. We kill this thing, then Pride would spawn, and people would be standing on him fighting the Pride, and they would actually be dying to that, and they didn't have any idea what was happening. So okay, so here we go. This is the hardest boss in the dungeon, in my opinion. And it's not hard at all. It's just you have to do something very specific. So the boss is him up here, but this is a big part of it. this add is going to do this mutilate constantly. Same mechanic we were just talking about. If you fail to account for this, you can easily die. And the big issue is sometimes there'll be a lot of them out, and that causes a lot of damage to the tank on a Tyrannical week. So the only real time it's ever going to be difficult is on Tyrannical. But they did just nerf this boss. So the previous group was trying to convince me that the nerf was substantial. It is not. It's obviously a nice nerf, but it's not so substantial that this is a one-phase fight every single time on Tyrannical. So you're going to see how the mechanic works here, okay? The Stitchflesh creation has to hook Surgeon Stitchflesh down with that mechanic, okay? This is like a noob trap. If somehow you're seeing this dungeon for the first time ever, and you're doing like a super low key or even like a normal dungeon, you're probably going to have a lot of people miss the hooks, but there's nothing to it. It's literally just aim it at the boss. You have like a 2-yard wiggle room on both sides of the boss, but if it's not aimed well, it will miss. Okay, I've seen it. The problem is when the Stitchflesh creation is far away, it's a little bit harder for these, guys to kind of get their head around what angle they need. So if it's like 100 yards away from the boss, you can still easily hit him. It has nothing to do with the length. It can hit no matter where it is. But then the angle that you have to approach is much thinner, right? It's much slower, or it's like you have to be much more accurate, right? But yeah, what this guy is doing is how you do it. You just stand as close to the boss as possible and be sure that it's facing it, and you're good. So here you will use weapons one way or the other. Very, very likely it's always going to be a spear and maybe more. Okay, so I should have probably used the orb here, but I don't. Again, this is just bad use of this, but one way or the other, we should be trying to one-phase this. The faster you kill this, the better. So we're going to use 1 spear and then 2 spear. And you see it does a large chunk of damage to the boss, but we still do not have enough damage to one-phase this. Now, I believe if you get him down to 10% or lower, he will not go back up. But you see escape. Here's the DBM countdown. You're telling when he's about to jump up again. So you need to have him down to that point before that happens, and we do not. And that really elongates the fight. It doubles the length of this fight, if you ask me. Anyway, there's another mechanic, Morbid Fixation. Same thing from the trash. This time, again, it's on this warrior. He has no idea it's on him until it hits him, and now he uses Die by the Sword, and he will not need to kite anymore, but he's still randomly running. So that can be difficult, and you might see it a bit here. So anyway, there's a bit of a bug that occurs, and I don't really understand if it's bugged or what, but sometimes he will spawn. So I guess what happens, I don't even think it's a bug. So what happens here is the boss will periodically summon an extra creation if there's not one out. So when we have that first one gone, or I don't even know if it works that way, but anyway, he will periodically summon when he's down there, okay? And then it seems like he always summons one when he jumps up. So at that point, there might be 3 out. And we had that last week. 3 of these creations out. It's dangerous for the tank, but it's actually probably worse for the group because now there's arrows going all over the place and it's almost impossible to actually hook the boss. A lot of times they will hook each other, okay? And one thing you won't see in this footage is that if you hook the boss while he does the fixate, he will stop the fixate. So we actually had like a protracted argument with this warrior from the previous week, the 2 weeks ago when this happened. And this guy is blaming me for this. He's saying that I'm not moving the Stitchflesh creations, right? So what he means by that is when they do the hook, they're stationary. So I should be moving the other ones away so they don't accidentally get hooked. Okay, so that's true. I can do that. Should I do it? Probably. It can be done. Does it need to be done? No. It's not mandatory, obviously, okay? But his point was that by me not doing that, we were unable to interrupt the fixate on the boss, which you can just move from. Like, to die to that fixate is like you have no idea, like you're clueless, right? Like you don't actually know the mechanic exists, first of all, or that it's on you to die to that. And this guy's saying the only way to survive it is to hook it, and because I'm not moving the mobs, we're wiping. It's like, no, you're dying to a fixate. You're dying to an avoidable mechanic. Stop that. So it can happen. I'm just warning you, it will happen. There will be times when you do this fight and you'll have multiple Stitchflesh creations out. It will be a problem, okay? I don't really have any advice for it. And honestly, my advice is one phase this boss. Like literally do everything in your power to one phase this boss. It is so much easier when you one phase this boss. And this will only ever be a problem on Tyrannical. But the easy way to one phase this boss, if you don't do it the first time, is the second hook that comes out of the first Stitchflesh creation should be preemptively aimed at the boss's location, okay? It will come out when the boss is still down on the ground attackable, but it takes so long to be thrown that you can do it preemptively, okay? And that will effectively make it like you just are in the DPS phase for longer. Like it basically doubles the length of time that you're in that DPS phase. And it's not a proper one phase, but if you do that right, it should turn it into a very easy, quick kill. But the problem we had there was we used both spears, so the Stitchflesh creation died. Okay. Now we can actually avoid that because the spear passes through targets. So if whoever used the spear was just on the opposite side of the creation and the boss was the only one hit, the creation wouldn't die. But again, this is all soup. I mean, I'm talking about all this stuff, and this is why I waited until the last dungeon for this, because it's probably the dungeon that you could maximize the most, but it's the easiest dungeon in the game by like no small margin. Like honestly, can anybody disagree with that? Does anybody feel like this is not the easiest dungeon in the game by a wide margin? Not just it's the easiest, but it's so easy that there's not even a competition for what's the second, for anything that's tied with first. We have 7 minutes left here on a 20 Tyrannical Necrotic Wake with 3 full wipes, 14 deaths. I mean, it's the easiest dungeon in the game, right? So anyway, this last boss is actually relatively dangerous. And I'm going to give you a very big tip right now, okay? If you take Necrotic Wounding, which is a buff anima power you can get from Varuth, which was all the way back at the start, it makes this boss a ton quicker. If 3 DPS have that, and I see no reason not to take it. It's incredibly good on Tyrannical, and it's incredibly good on a single target regardless. And it's super good utility. This is the only time that you actually would have trouble in this dungeon would be this last boss because of how long this fight takes. Healer can easily fall behind. But we come up here with Lust and we still have some weapons, so it is going to die very quick. I don't know who has the Dagger of Necrotic Wounding, but it will make the shield that he puts up way smaller. And if you did this in a high Tyrannical key in Season 1, you would know that the shield was like, it's super bad because he puts the shield up when there's nobody up, like when one of the players is downstairs doing the mechanic, okay? So unfortunately, I actually have no idea how that mechanic works as DPS. I've never done it before, not once. It doesn't happen to healer or tank. But from what I can tell is there's stuff that you have to dodge. You have to run along the path along the side, and then you kill a mob and you get ported back. Then when you come back up, you have a buff. You do a lot more damage, but you also have a thing that after so many seconds, you will drop a blue patch of ice, okay? So pay attention to that. Do not drop the ice in the middle of the room. Make sure you drop it on the edge. I don't think it goes away, but I think its size is commensurate to how much time you spent down there. So if you're down there really, really long, the patch is going to be massive. And I have seen people spend a really long time down there. So anyway, that's all I know for that. I can't give you great advice on that, but it's tank and healer this fight, you're always up here. Now, that frozen bounds or whatever it's called, frozen binds, really good tip here, okay? As a paladin in general, any paladin can do this. If you pre-freedom the target, you will not have the mechanic. It will not go. Like it will go on the person and it will do nothing. So I'm going to actually show you how I do that. Not as a paladin myself, but you will see what I mean. It's a weak aura. Oh, it's under the cam. I have a weak aura that shows casts on their targets. Okay, so this was actually a mandatory weak aura back in Legion because boss casts would literally one-shot DPS. So you'd need to know who it was on so you could preemptively give them a mechanic. So get something like this. As you see, it's on my Voodoo. But yeah, you can set it up to be on any frame. I use 2 frames for some reasons. But anyway, it's on my Voodoo. So I see it would be on this guy. And that means he's casting it. So he hasn't done it yet. He's targeting him with the spell. So it's showing up. And then I pre-freedom that guy. I give him freedom the second I see that icon. And as long as you do it before Frozen Binds happens, that's it. That's the mechanic. It's not going to happen. Every single time you can do it. Literally every single time. So that's it. A warrior can also spell reflect in the same way. If he spell reflects before, it will not go out. But it's from Ragnaros. So anyway, we have the shield. As you see, it gets destroyed when everybody's up here. But the other tip I will give you for this fight is a lot of people want to use a spear, or not a spear, but a weapon in general. I guess maybe a hammer mostly. I have this orb up still. We're going to use this. Breaking the shield immediately is super good. It basically would just get rid of shields. In Season 1, people would save all their hammers for this boss and break every time a damage dealer was downstairs and a shield was up, we would break the shield immediately. But you see, at least, there must be some people with Dagger of Necrotic Wounding because the shield is very small. It doesn't even need damage to be broken. So I'm using the orb here. Like I said, terrible use of this orb. But it's actually really good damage, even on a single target. I had no idea how good it was. I don't know if I actually show it at some point. But I'm very surprised at how much damage it does. It's like actually my top damage on the fight. So one way or the other, whatever weapons you can save for this boss, do it. But don't skimp on that third boss. Me not using these weapons on that third boss was not good. I should have used both of them on that third boss, and we would have one-phased it. And this fight would not be any harder, honestly. But as you see, yeah, I mean, what more needs to be said at this point? That guy's dead. But he dies because he takes super long down there. And he actually gets hit by a mechanic while he's down there and then comes up and doesn't do anything. Again, he doesn't freaking mind. The other cool thing about that Frozen Bonds is once you see it, like once you know it's on you, you should leave the group. Like don't leave the party. Sorry, you just move out of the stack on the boss. Like, so if you're on a range, it's easy, you're already out. But if you're not going to be able to get rid of it, so you see it's on that hunter and he's already out there. So it just can be instantly dispelled, right? But if you're a tank, you're never going to get the mechanic, but you're going to have to move out of it a lot. So it'd be really nice, especially if you have multiple melee, if the melee with it sees they have it and moves out of the group. So the rest of the group doesn't have to move out of it afterwards and they can keep DPSing the boss. And you would expect that would be happening in a 20 Tyrannical, but I mean, not really. So, but you see the Shaman actually accurately moves a few yards away to make sure no matter what, he could instantly dispel. And that's how you do. You just dispel it. You need to dispel it before the Comet Storm. If for some reason you don't understand this, it drops like 5 comets on the ground. Each one that you get hit by gives you a stack that makes the next one take more damage. So you have to move out. You cannot survive all of them. But I've been hit by upwards of 2, and I still don't die typically. There you see Discharge Anima, my top damage. So really surprised that item actually does really good single target. So I use both items for a combo of a sizable chunk of damage. This is a good boss to have weapons on, but the problem with this boss is it's very long if people don't take it serious. Like there's so many small tricks you can do on it, like moving out or freedoming or using the spears or the weapons, etc. Or just having Dagger of Necrotic Wounding now. It makes the fight so much quicker. And it's really just a much easier fight with that in tow. So that's it. That was our first Necrotic Wake 20. And again, I just want to point this out. We have over 4, well, not quite. We're going to have probably like just under 4 minutes. Yeah, we're going to have 3 minutes and 45 seconds would be my guess. Left on a 20 in time with, well, it was a 14. I think it was ended up being like 15 deaths. 15 deaths because a warrior dies on this fight. And we actually have no trouble. Literally none. We are in such a comfortable position. We would have to wipe to this boss. And even if we did, I think we might still be able to come back and do it again. I did promise, though, I forgot to show the weapon locations. So I'll quickly go back. So there's probably like a map out there that you can find. But anyway, there's a hammer right here. You see it's right behind this kind of speared, this very disgusting angel. I didn't even really notice that. But anyway, it's right behind here. A lot of people won't pull this guy, but you really want that hammer. So people try to like CC it and get it anyway. I just get the mob. Like it's a fine thing to pull. But there's a hammer there. And then I'll show you where the spear is too. There's another spear. And then again, there's a shield over on the left side here, kind of right behind this wall. It's probably hard to tell, but this is the left side of the dungeon. There's a shield there. You could go and get that if you want, but I'm not really sure what you'd use it for. So if anybody's ever used the shield, let me know. I'd love to hear what you're using it for, but Here's the other spear. You see, this warrior jumps and grabs it. It's right here in between, like it's kind of like a broken cart maybe, and a dead Kyrian there. It's always like a dead Kyrian next to one of these weapons. So not all of them are useful. Some really grim stuff going on in this dungeon. But yeah, just so like to recap. I think honestly, if you didn't use any of this stuff well, like I would love to see a dungeon with no Kyrian for the buff, no weapons used, and I guess that would be everything. Yeah, no weapons used. Maybe like don't kill the dudes with the shields that automatically one-shot themselves, like the biggest health pool in the dungeon, and they just automatically one-shot themselves. There's just so many like so much stuff that you can do in this dungeon. It's got more stuff in this dungeon that you can do for a big advantage than every other dungeon put together. I think Plaguefall is definitely another one. But really, I don't think there's another dungeon that has more than one or two things. And mostly they're always just like the buff. Like the Venthyr buffs are very good in those two dungeons, but that's it. There's nothing else in that dungeon that you can do to kill trash. Eat like just one-shot trash, right? And it's constantly. It's like a 50% of the count that you're going to get in here. It's something that you can just like manipulate with either one of these items or something that it does. Throw the cleaver at each other. It's like I really am staggered at how easy this dungeon is. So this was the last one for a reason, because I knew I needed to be exhaustive, and I knew I needed to find footage of what it looks like when you fail. We could not fail worse than this. Honestly, these are massive, ridiculous errors that you should never encounter. We encountered them. We still wiped 3 times and kill the boss with 3 minutes and 45 seconds left, guys. So I hope this series has been helpful. If you have any questions or anything else that you need from me, please let me know. Otherwise, we will see you guys in the next one.